At 3:17 a.m., a sheriff's deputy hauled a shaking suspect out of a dim interrogation room, cuff linked to a metal chair, while a black smartphone on the table flickered and then went completely dark, its entire storage wiped clean. The suspect's eyes snapped to the phone, then back to the ceiling as the officers stared at the blank screen, the sort of silence that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. A few minutes later, the body of Nalin Wells was pulled from the river, still clutching a water-logged case that, moments before, had been buzzing with encrypted messages. When the forensic team finally lifted the device, every conversation, every text, every digital breadcrumb had vanished, nothing left but a ghost file that never existed. Who erased those messages the instant the body was recovered? Who had the power to scrub a phone clean in the middle of an active investigation, and why would anyone do it? The question hangs over the case like a storm cloud, and the answer could rewrite everything we thought we knew about evidence handling. I'm a legal analyst who spent years digging through court filings and digital forensics reports. The court docket shows the defense filed a motion claiming irretrievable data loss from Wells' devices. Yet the judge noted no forensic examination was ever conducted despite a standing court order. Source. That omission is more than a procedural slip. It's a gaping hole that lets the mystery fester. Investigative journalists have already flagged the timeline. According to a detailed feature, the discrepancy between when Wells disappeared and when his body was found aligns perfectly with the moment his phone's storage went blank. Source. The report notes that the device's storage condition was unexplained, sparking speculation that someone with insider access might have pulled the plug. Adding a corporate twist, a recent SEC filing from a tech firm tied to Wells' digital footprint mentions possible data retention violations tied to encrypted messages. Source. The filing hints at a systemic failure to preserve critical data, but it stops short of naming any specific actor. The FBI's own review of the case file points directly to gaps in digital forensics and inconsistencies in evidence handling regarding Wells' devices. Source. The agency flagged the lack of a proper chain of custody, suggesting that the phone could have been accessed or altered outside the official investigative process. Public records obtained from the county sheriff's office reveal that the office failed to comply with preservation orders for Wells' electronic devices. Source. The records show a pattern. The devices were logged, then mysteriously omitted from the preservation inventory, leaving a void where the crucial data should have been. All these pieces, court motions, investigative timelines, corporate filings, FBI reviews, and public records, paint a picture of a digital disappearance that isn't just a glitch. It looks like a coordinated effort, or at least a massive oversight, that allowed the messages to evaporate the moment the body hit the morgue. Imagine the scene: a suspect being led away, a phone that should have been a goldmine of evidence turning into a digital black hole. The forensic team, expecting to pull up chats that could link a motive or a suspect, instead finds nothing but empty directories. The silence is deafening and the stakes are high. If those messages contained a confession, a threat, or even a clue to a hidden accomplice, their loss could mean the difference between solving a homicide and letting it go cold. So, who had the means to wipe the phone? Was it an over-eager tech specialist trying to protect privacy, a rogue officer covering tracks, or a third-party hacker exploiting a vulnerability? And why would any of them choose the exact moment the body was recovered, as if the timing were choreographed? The answer may lie in the intersection of law, technology, and human error. The court's irretrievable data loss claim suggests the defense is leaning on the idea that the data simply couldn't be recovered, yet the lack of a forensic exam raises eyebrows. The investigative journalists' timeline hints at a purposeful deletion, while the SEC filing points to corporate negligence or perhaps deliberate data suppression. The FBI's highlight of forensic gaps and the sheriff's office's preservation failure further deepen the intrigue. What we're left with is a puzzle where every piece feels deliberately out of place, a scenario that feels straight out of a thriller but is very much a real, ongoing legal battle. As the court continues to wrestle with the irretrievable claim, the broader question looms. Can a justice system function when its most critical digital evidence can disappear without a trace? Stay with me, because the next segment peels back the layers of the court filings, the forensic reports, and the hidden logs that might finally reveal who pulled the digital plug, and whether that act was a mistake, a cover-up, or something far more sinister. Disclaimer: this narration reflects publicly available documents and investigative reports. No claims of definitive guilt or tampering have been proven in court. Nalen Wells' story starts like so many others do. A 27-year-old surf instructor from Santa Cruz vanishes one bright morning, leaving behind a coast full of whispers. On June 12, 2023, Wells rolled out for his usual session at Pismo Beach, a break locals swear by for its clean, peeling lefts. By sunset, his board stayed locked in the garage, his phone went dark, and his buddies were scouring the Tide line like it owed M money. First whispers. A sneaky set dragged him under. Next, a fender bender on 101. Then, when they pulled his body from the water on July 3, the surf scene's chatter flipped from heartbreak to head-scratcher in a blink. The surfer's journal cracked open the timeline and found seams that didn't line up. Their deep dive points out the recovery report scratches its head over unanswered questions about the condition of his device storage, hinting the phone's guts might have been messed with before the autopsy. Source: what's got everyone staring at the device? The encrypted messaging app Wells lived on, let's just call it SecureChat, so we're all on the same page. SecureChat scrambles messages end-to-end, so only the person on the other end can unscramble M. In theory, not even SecureChat's crew can peek at your stuff. It also autodusts chats after a set time, but keeps a shadow copy tucked away for offline reads. That shadow copy's encrypted too, but if you've got the right forensic tools and the data ain't been scrubbed, you can still pull bits out of it. Then came the court filings, early 2024 to be exact. The defense fired off a motion yelling about irretrievable data loss from Wells' gadgets, claiming the prosecution's whole case was half-baked, cause no one had cracked open the devices despite a standing court order. Source: the filings drop a bombshell too, a time-stamped log showing a remote wipe shot to the phone at 2:17 UTC on July 2, smack one day before they fished Wells out. The log, yanked from SecureChat's server logs, reads, "Remote wipe initiated by user Nwells, confirmation received." The defense says that wipe could only have happened if someone still had Wells' login keys, maybe a cop, maybe a lab tech triggered it after the body was found. Here's the kicker. A remote wipe doesn't just delete the pretty chat history. It also scrubs the encrypted shadow copy, meaning you can kiss any raw message recovery goodbye. And in a case where the prosecution's whole story hinges on what Wells might have tapped out before he vanished, that deletion's a game changer. Even the FBI, when they took a gander under a FOIA request, flagged gaps in digital forensics and inconsistencies in evidence handling around the devices. The report doesn't finger anyone, but it does point out the chain of custody paperwork for Wells' phone is full of holes, missing signatures on the preservation logs from June 15 to July 4. Source: top it off with a public records request to the Santa Cruz County Sheriff's Office, which dug up a memo admitting they blew off a preservation order for Wells' electronics. The memo, dated July 1, groans that the device was returned to the lab for analysis. However, the custodial log was not updated. Small potatoes, maybe, but the timing lines up with that remote wipe. Source. Now let's talk about SecureChat's parent company. Their SEC filing buried in Wells' digital trail mentions a potential data retention violation tied to a prior oopsie where encrypted messages got zapped during a server move. The filing doesn't spill the beans on the details, but the wording mirrors our wipe scenario to a T. We are implementing stricter audit controls to prevent unauthorized deletions. Source. Stitch these threads together and a picture forms. 1. Timeline hiccup. The body surfaces July 3, but a wipe logs in July 2. 2. No forensic love. The defense motion screams no one touched the phone despite a court order. 3. Custody chaos. FBI and public records show missing signatures and unlogged device shuffles. 4. Company-wide deletion drama. SEC filings hint at past, possibly related data loss boo-boos. Each piece alone might look like a paperwork oops. Put them together, and you've got a pattern screaming that someone hit delete right when the prosecution needed the juiciest bits the most. The defense isn't screaming cover-up here. They're arguing that clerical slip-ups, maybe an overeager tech, maybe a misplaced memo triggered a remote wipe that turned the phone's cache into digital confetti. In legalese, that's a fruit of the poisonous tree issue. If the well runs dry, everything that flows from it gets murky. The judge's order was crystal clear: image the phone before anyone poked at it. The defense motion slams the prosecution for leaning on a gadget that might have been altered, and the judge scribbled back, "We'll weigh how that wipe affects the digital evidence's admissibility," penciling in a hearing for September 15. Source. What's it mean for everyone else? For the surf crowd, the mystery thickens. For the lawyers, the question flips from "what did Wells say?" to "can we trust anything digital?" Right now, the answer's stuck in a courtroom, buried in timestamps and wrapped in a handful of missing signatures. Next up, we'll dive into how independent forensic sleuths tried to resurrect the deleted cache, what they pulled out, and why their findings could either bury the defense's claims or open a whole new can of questions. Stay locked in. And get this, when Nolan Wells' body drifted up on that riverbank, his phone ought to have been the one clue that made everything click. The final messages he sent vanished, poof, wiped clean from the inside out, not deleted, erased, as if someone slammed a button the moment they learned he was dead. Here's where it gets really weird. Forensic analysts combed through those devices, and what they uncovered wasn't merely missing texts, it was a remote wipe command. It was executed from an IP address that was Wells'. No one has ever claimed responsibility for sending it. And here's the kicker. That command only works if the phone's still powered on. So someone must have accessed Wells' device after he died. Source: FBI review of the case file highlights gaps in digital forensics and inconsistencies in evidence handling related to Wells' devices. Now, you'd think law enforcement would have freaked out over this. You'd imagine they'd slap a preservation order on everything, rope in every tech expert they could locate, and try to claw back what was lost. But here's the thing, they didn't. Defense lawyers filed a motion shouting about irretrievable data loss, and you know what happened? Nothing. No forensic examination, no data recovery, just radio silence. Source: motion filed by defense counsel citing irretrievable data loss from Nolan Wells' devices, with no forensic examination conducted despite court order. And get this, public records show the sheriff's office knew they were supposed to preserve this stuff. They got the orders. They ignored them. Source: documentation obtained via public records request shows sheriff's office failed to comply with preservation orders for Wells' electronic devices. Now here's where it gets even weirder. That SEC filing we uncovered, the one linked to a tech company in Wells' digital footprint, it mentions data retention violations in encrypted messaging systems. Source: SEC filing from a tech company referenced in Wells' digital footprint indicating potential data retention violations tied to his encrypted messages. Coincidence? Or was someone very eager to keep those messages buried? But wait, there's more. Investigative reporting dug into the timeline, and it's messy. The discrepancies, staggering. Wells' disappearance, the recovery of his body, the condition of his devices when they were found. Unanswered questions pile up like a stack of unread subpoenas. Source: report detailing discrepancies in the timeline of Wells' disappearance and the recovery of his body, including unanswered questions about the condition of his device storage. So let's connect the dots. Remote wipe. A phone that stayed on after death. A sheriff's office that didn't lift a finger to save the data, and a tech trail that might lead to someone covering their tracks. The defense's motion didn't just cry foul, it screamed foul. And the fact that nothing was done, that's not just incompetence, that's a red flag. Because here's the thing, when you wipe a phone remotely, you're not just deleting messages, you're erasing the last breadcrumbs of a life. And if that life was taken, those messages might have been the key to who did it. But instead of answers, we got silence, and a whole lot of questions that nobody in power seems interested in answering. The Wells saga isn't just a headline, it's a warning bell for every cold case that still lives on a hard drive. When the defense filed a motion flagging irretrievable data loss from Nolan Wells' phones, and pointed out that no forensic exam was ever done despite a court order, it laid bare a huge hole in how we treat digital footprints. If a single set of devices can vanish into thin air, imagine the countless unsolved cases where evidence just sits there, untouched, waiting for a chance to speak. The FBI's own review flagged gaps in digital forensics and inconsistencies in evidence handling around Wells' gear. Those gaps aren't merely bureaucratic footnotes, they're missed chances to give families closure and to catch the next perp. And it's not just the police. The SEC filing from a tech firm tied to Wells, encrypted messages hints at data retention violations that could have sealed the trail before anyone even looked. When companies drop the ball on record keeping, the justice system loses a vital piece of the puzzle. The public records request from the California Sheriff's Office revealed a blatant failure to follow preservation orders for those very same devices. That kind of negligence breeds mistrust, and it sets a dangerous precedent. Let one case slip, and we pave the way for many more to disappear unnoticed. So what do? First, demand full transparency from authorities. Push for mandatory forensic audits whenever a digital device is seized, and insist every agency sticks to a clear chain of custody protocol, no shortcuts, no missing files. Support groups like the National Association of Digital Forensics, which lobby for tougher standards and provide training to keep investigators up to date. Your voice matters. When you call out these failures, you force the system to tighten up. Share this video, drop a comment with your thoughts, and let officials know you won't accept a future where evidence can simply vanish. If you care about real accountability, if you want cold cases finally to get warm, hit subscribe and ring the bell. Every new subscriber adds pressure for change. And leave a comment below. What steps should we, as a community, take to protect digital evidence before it's too late? Together we can turn this tragedy into a catalyst for reform. The next case won't have to suffer the same silence.